Okay, so I'm going to move on now to action items. Action item 5.1 is discussion and action on a resolution approving the plan unit development final development plan for Rivers Bend multifamily residential development on 47.3 acres encompassing current parcels that are denoted on the agenda west of River Road and east of the interstate. So that is item 5.1. I guess I'm looking at staff. Do we want to just keep it one item at a time right now?
Either way, Jim, for this would be fine.
And I think then I will also open up discussion and recommendation on a certified survey map, together dividing into 7 lots, 7 outlots, and a public road right-of-way, 47.3 acres, encompassing current parcels denoted on the agenda, west of River Road and east of the interstate. So I'd say the discussion is open up for both. We'll have to do different resolutions or recommendations once we get to those. But Mark, looks like you want to start.
Yes, just thanks, Jim. And as I'm starting, the project team can feel free to come up to the front desk here. This is a proposal that's been before you in a couple of different forms before. It's a proposal for 298 townhouse and stack flat units along River Road between River Road and the interstate. What's before you this evening is a final development plan and a series of certified survey maps that would divide the land. The final development plan is in essence the detailed site plan for this project. This would be the last time you would see these folks likely before they pull building permits and start developing their land. There's a lot of information in your packet. These guys are going to summarize it, and then I'm certainly available to answer questions about all that information and our recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Oh, well, there we go. I guess, could I ask you guys to please state your name and the address for the record and then do your presentation if you would.
Certainly. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to present before you tonight. My name is Paul Schmitter, 789 North Water Street, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, representing Fiduciary Real Estate.
Sam Elliott, same address, same company.
Also joining us tonight, if need be, are both our civil engineers and our architecture firm. So if we need to go and get some questions answered with them, they'd be happy to help. Again, this is, I think, the third time you're seeing this presentation. I plan on going quickly tonight, simply because very little has changed. I will point out the changes as we go along. But this is for the River Bend townhomes, and it is for the FDP tonight, as you stated. Just to recap, and a lot of this presentation tonight will be recapping, since it's the third go at it here with this group. Village board meeting last March, planning and zoning in March. We did have a nice neighborhood meeting back in June. Planning and zoning again back in September, and October, the village board. So just a quick reminder on the site, located between 94 and River Road, just south of Norway Grove. Final site plan, again, very little has changed. 298 residences, overall density of 6.04 units per acre, 60% green space on the site. We intentionally set out to maintain a very large amount of green space on this site. There's 42 total residential buildings. They are all condo style apartment residences. This is really an attempt to blend in more with the single family residences versus what might look like an apartment complex. All buildings, two-story. Every unit has its own entry and every unit has a garage. 2 public parks on this site. The clubhouse incorporates a fitness center, swimming pool with a sun deck. The dog run is located, I'll show you where we end up with that. And then for site amenities, we've got grilling stations. There's great opportunities for resident recreation on this site. Some additional enhanced landscaping and leasing offices incorporated in the clubhouse. Road extensions are consistent with the village long-range plans, and we're quite a ways, with the exception of the clubhouse and one of the buildings. We're 500 feet off of River Road. We did that for a number of reasons, as we explained at the last meeting, sound and just a nice green buffer. So the updates since the PDP, although the plan has not changed much, we've been very busy working with staff. We've had a couple meetings. We refined the material and color selection that's in your packet for the buildings. Kudos to our architectural firm. I think they did a real nice job pulling that together. Another thing that has changed since the PDP is there's a rather large area that is going to end up as public parkland for the village out towards the interstate. We also did spend quite a bit of time with the village and the fire and the police department. I don't think they brought up any new concerns in what we've already heard, but I know we do have an approved plan with truck turning radiuses, things like that. There was also kind of I don't want to call it a compromise, but the fire chief wanted us to just park on one side and not near the corners, things like that. That made a lot of sense. So I believe he's comfortable with where we ended up. We did add one small maintenance building to the site plan. I'll show you that on the next slide. And that's part of our commitment to really try to keep the site looking good, the grounds looking good. So we felt that there was a need to have we're going to end up with our own snowplow truck that'll be stored in that building, along with whatever means it is for our maintenance staff, groundskeeping supplies, a small office for them, things like that. And also included in the packet is the entry sign, the monument sign that'll be out by River Road. We also worked through a number of the site amenities. Like I had mentioned before, there's some grill stations that show up on the site. A lot of the walks were reviewed, where those go. And then, the behind the scenes stuff, the grading plans and all those were reviewed, and we spent a lot of time with that. So here's the revised site plan, very similar. Again, the clubhouse out by the River Road, and then everything else pushed back. This is the park that was referenced in the previous meetings. And then this entire area back here, working with staff, we thought that would be a good idea for that to be a park at some point and be able to utilize that. I know that disc golf was one of the ideas, but ultimately it's going to be up to the village and park. I'm sure some conversations on the best utilization for that. This small here, and this area is where we ended up with the maintenance building. Again, it's nice looking. We kept it, in same color patterns, things like that. And the dog run would then be located immediately adjacent to it, because it made sense to put the dog wash area in this building as well that can be accessed from the outside. So that's really the big changes we had. Going to this is the clubhouse. This is more precedent imagery because the colors will be slightly different, but this is same clubhouse we have at our project in Madison called the 85, and project in Verona called the Apex. Different colors, but it gives you a better idea of really how this feels, how people use it. People like the sun deck actually a little more than the pool, but the kids love the pool. Fitness center, and then gathering room. These are the architectural elements, the colors we ended up with. There's 2 different kinds of stone, there's 3 different colored brick, and then ultimately 6 different combinations of paint. Again, this was done to really kind of mimic what a single family subdivision might look like, with different variations between the buildings for paint and the stone. And we did keep the roof color the same throughout. So this, you know, they're all kind of keyed in here, but this gives you a pretty good idea of where the colors go, and it's, a couple of them aren't far off of what the park building is right outside the window. So they're kind of the muted grays, whites, things like that, that we wanted to lean towards, and I think they ended up very nice. The last slide is an artist's rendering showing the actual colors that we had picked from a vantage point looking towards the townhomes and the stack flats. And this is actually would be a simulation of what it would look like, kind of standing just right off the sidewalk, looking kind of northwest. So again, I think it's very tastefully put together with the natural materials. We did end up trying to concentrate a lot of the brick and the stone towards the street side. I think we did a nice job of that. That's I think Mark Roffers can comment on that if need be, but I think we've hit kind of checked all the boxes on that. So we have taken these three building types from previous projects that have been very successful. And I think we've created and checked all the boxes for what we feel is going to be a very nice, well-accepted development, and we're very excited about it. So at this point, I'll leave the site plan up, but I'll open it up for any questions you might have of us.
Thank you. Questions from commissioners or? Mike?
I'd like to ask a question on the clubhouse area and the sidewalk communication with it. I see folks that would be on the north side and immediately west as to, I'm assuming they'll walk there. They're not going to drive probably. And I'm guessing they're just going to go across the yard?
Well, yeah, and this did come up. So the plan is, and keep in mind that this entire site is both ADA and meeting self-imposed FHA requirements. So when we put a sidewalk in, we have to be very careful with the slope and things like that. So the sidewalk connection, and it is a little hard to see on this, it's a little easier to see on the grading plan, but this sidewalk does connect from here to here. Is somebody gonna cut across here? Probably. But for us, and again, it doesn't show really well, but there's a slope here that's kind of our grade break that was necessary to make the site work. It would be a little difficult to put an ADA accessible sidewalk down, kind of cutting through here. Also, with this being park, I don't know if the village would have wanted that sidewalk through there or not. So I guess we're open to it. Mark had brought up that question a while back, but for a number of reasons, we're not showing it right now because it's basically that piece is getting turned over to the village.
Okay, thank you.
Lisa?
I'm kind of expanding on Mike's question, but to the north of the clubhouse there, just west of River Road, there could potentially be some accessibility there. Did you all think about maybe something there for, access point to that clubhouse? And do you notice that on the south side of Road A, there is the appearance of maybe a sidewalk or an easement or something of that nature?
I believe in the planner's report, Mark shaking his head, they did ask for a sidewalk that would connect these two. So that will show up before permit sets. And I think that's on our engineer's to-do list, is to put that sidewalk in.
Thank you.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Because I'm looking south of Road A, that looks, is that a path rather than sidewalk? Are you gonna do,
Between the ponds?
say more or less along River Road?
Oh,
But I'm
section
questioning,
here.
you said sidewalk would connect between Road A and Road B. Is that what you're planning sidewalk, or is it gonna be, say, the same path?
This section here would actually be sidewalk.
Okay,
We're trying to balance, providing obviously the connection that's important with, not trying to squeeze too much into too little space there, and a path is 10 feet wide, a sidewalk is 5 feet wide. So, in my opinion, a sidewalk would work better there, but if the engineering suggests a path is better,
Yeah,
it's a problem.
we're getting cramped there with,
Right.
the ditch there is actually our stormwater drainage that conveys stormwater down to the south part of the site. So there's street trees in there that are very nice that just went in when River Road was reconstructed. We've got the ditch, and I believe we looked at that, and there's room for the sidewalk. So there's quite a bit going on there, but I think we can make it all fit.
okay.
If you're.
Thank you.
The path section in the outlot between Road A and Daly Road, difficult to tell on this map, but you can also cross on path at Woods Glen Court, Road A, to get to path on the east side of River Road. So there's continuity with a 10-foot wide path on the east side of River Road in that location. So it doesn't seem incongruous to me to have a 5-foot sidewalk adjacent to the clubhouse and then a 10-foot path east of the stormwater pond.
Lisa, did you have any further questions?
Thank you for asking, Jim. I just have a quick question. I'm looking at comparing a couple of the maps here between my laptop and what we have on our screens. And I'm curious if there's any sort of crosswalk or safety feature going from Road A across the street where it kind of connects and you see like the Van Couple Living Center or something of that nature right across the road. I would imagine like you might need some sort of crosswalk or some
Right.
sort of safety feature markings.
Crossing River Road?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Have
there
we
is.
thought of that?
There's a requirement for, our civil engineer is a fancy name for it, but it's like a landing path where you
Yeah.
can get halfway across and there's a place to stop in case somebody comes shooting down the road.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's part of the plan. I think it does show up on the engineering drawings.
There'll be a push button signal, a pedestrian crossing signal at that location as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Could we maybe expunge or whatever word you want to use? And I'm not going to ask you to pull up the engineering plans because I know how that's going to work. But could you talk about the different crosswalks that
Yeah.
it is available?
So
I'm
there's
curious if
crosswalks.
there was one at B also.
Sure, there's crosswalks that you see on this plan already, and there's crosswalks that are recommended in my report and the village engineer's report. So the one we just discussed will be a path crossing, I believe, on the south side of River Road. And that's the one we were just talking about with the signal for crossing. There will not be a crossing, there isn't a crossing planned at Road B and River Road because we don't have safe a way to make that happen. So instead, that's where the recommendation for bringing the sidewalk between Road A and Road B comes. So if you want to get across the street, you have a safe place to do it at Road A, Woods Glen Court. There will also be, for the recommendations, at least one crosswalk at each of the roads within the development. A ramp on either side, allowing people to get safely across or directing them across, including this middle road, which is a private road, but when you're out there, it's going to look like a public road to everyone. So this intersection, this intersection, this intersection, this intersection will all have pedestrian crossings The final recommended location for a crossing is right here. Paul talked about that walkway that's partially obscured by the trees in this concept. That walkway sort of terminates right here, but the dog park's right across the street. So we're recommending a third crosswalk, or a third, I don't even know how to count. Well, however many crosswalk in this location, sort of mid-block.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Comments? Yes, I have a couple. I don't know, Mark, I shared some of them. Do you want to tell me any follow-up before I just maybe mention them?
Yeah, Jim and I talked this afternoon, and he had a handful of comments. I have anticipated those tonight in the resolution. So if you want to do that right now, Jim, I can
Yeah.
go to the resolution and talk to those. But if you want to
Yep.
bring them up quickly. we
Yeah,
can
if you could bring up the resolution. So one thing I noticed is that some of the walks, say the different buildings, and I'm trying to look at which ones, but it looked like there is pretty steep slopes going right to the edge of the sidewalk. So I was requesting to either have, say, some sort of delineation of a fence, or to have at least a 2-foot buffer of a 10-to-1 slope before you, say, go to a 4-to-1 or a 3-to-1. Or the retaining wall, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, we did talk about that with the team, including the engineer before the meeting. And Jim, what I've added to the draft resolution in responses to, you see this one right here, provide at least a 2-foot wide area of no greater than 10-to-1 slope adjacent to all public sidewalks and should say private walkways before steeper slopes commence, or otherwise provide fall protection in these areas.
Perfect. Another one that pertains to this is the townhomes. I'm showing TH1 and TH2 that's in the northeast quadrant of your subdivision. I'm just asking for some additional landscape along the northern property line to mask, I'll say, some of the garage faces there.
So it's a good point, Jim. There's tall trees on the cemetery site, but they, except for the trunks, the canopy doesn't start until 15, 20 feet above the ground. So there is that kind of view underneath. So what we've done is suggest that additional condition be made to amend the landscape plan to read as follows: either through mid-level all-season landscaping, fencing, or some combination, better buffer the rear of the TH1 building from the northeast. The TH1 building is the far northeastern one.
Okay.
The TH2 building is recessed quite a bit by grade
In
change.
elevation, yeah.
Yeah, so this will be 8-10 feet above the parking lot level. So that building will sort of naturally sink a little bit, and it's quite a bit further from the street.
Okay, thank you. And the last thing that I'm showing it as 2 bullet points, but it's really sort of one, is the Daily Road intersection and your path connection to it. I was wanting something a little bit, say, more standard with crosswalk rather than set so far back. Did you guys talk about that, Mark? Or?
Yes, and with permission to work out the details among the engineers. I hope I captured it here, Jim. It says adjust the connection between the proposed path across Outlot 3 and Daily Road to facilitate potential path crossing of River Road at that point. And then there was a minor detail and verify dimensions of proposed culvert under the path in this area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm hoping you relayed, is like, my concern is that that location or the outlot that's being granted for, was it environmental corridor?
Yeah.
We've talked about having a river access there, so I think that's gonna be a destination. I just want to make sure everybody has safe crossing.
We'll continue to work on that.
And
Um,
that's all I had, so thank you for inserting those in the resolution.
You bet.
Any other comments, questions, Mike?
I do have a question, and I think it goes to Mark. Did I happen to read across a comment about something about the parking near the clubhouse?
Yeah, well, there's two comments. So you see on this map, there's a proposed parking lot up here. If we were to look at the certified survey map, you'd see that that's in the public park. Public park kind of wraps around the clubhouse lot. And then there's a second parking lot to the west of the clubhouse. Given the slopes in the area and the fact that the village doesn't know exactly how it's going to program this public park, we've asked them to remove the public parking lot from this northern end. There may end up being a parking lot there ultimately. The village will instead, I'd love to hear this, get park fees from the developer instead of the developer building the parking lot. And we'll have some ability to be flexible there. This southern parking lot is directly east of the largest flat area within the public park. If we had the grading plan here, there's probably 1.5 acres of flat ground, which, you know, more likely than not will be programmed with some practice fields or you know, youth soccer or things like that. It'll be an awful tempting opportunity for someone using the public park to use their clubhouse parking lot. And so the comment I offered is, you know, you're going to probably have to do some policing with a small p to keep that, you know, middle of summer available for your patrons and not for people wanting to use the public park. Those are issues that, well, first of all, they can try to address it through landscaping, you know, short fence, again, monitoring. But before the village will, you know, start tossing equipment here, there'll be a park master planning process that the village will go through like it has with all its other parks to kind of work through some of those issues and to figure out where people coming from the community will park when they're visiting, you know, this park as well as folks in the neighborhood.
Thank you, Mark. And that
Sure.
kind of brings up another question for Paul. Clubhouse use, can residents bring in non-residents for family events and whatnot then in the clubhouse?
Yeah, as long as there is a resident present. Sure, we use them a lot for anything from Super Bowl parties to birthday parties, anniversaries, things like that.
Sure.
There's people that come from, you know, outside that don't have any association with us other than knowing someone that actually lives there.
And the parking, how many spaces are in that lot there?
I think there's 11. Don't know off the top of my head, but I think that's what we ended up with. And that's based on our experience with our other projects that have the same clubhouse, the same functions, similar activity levels, things like that.
There will be parking allowed on one side of Road A as well.
Oh, okay.
So it would be logical that that be the north side, but that hasn't been determined yet.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Anybody else? Could you bring the resolution on screen again? So we've been discussing items 5.1 and 5.2. I think what's in front of us now is a resolution for 5.1.
That's right.
So if there's no other discussion, we're open for a motion. Right now, the resolution in front of us is what staff's recommending.
With the amendments we just discussed.
Yes, yeah. Anybody willing to make the motion? Thank you, Justin.
Motion to approve the resolution 2025-904, planned unit development, final development plan for the Rivers Bend multiple family residential development on parcel 0909-244-9343-1 and 0909-244-9651-1.
Thank you. And to clarify, that's the motion as in front of us now on the committee, which is amended from what was in the packet.
Correct.
Thank you. So we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lisa. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0.
Just go back.
Thank you guys very much. Out of curiosity, do you know when your schedule is or you're hoping to break ground and things?
I think we are scheduled sometime in June. We still have a number of steps to go through. CARP-C, MMSD, DNR, there's still a lot of other, but that's kind of what we're targeting. So the earlier the better as far as we're concerned, but there's still a lot of things that we have to go through.
Hoping rent for the end of the year, or is that going to be a spring thing?
It would be spring. It's the same question.
Okay.
Yeah, so we build the clubhouse first. It acts as our control point, and then we start building the buildings, and it's usually, these are a little different, but it's usually about a month every building comes online.
Okay. Well, thank you guys very much.
You.
Regarding item 5.2 that you opened up, this is a series of certified survey maps that kind of work all together to create the land division, dividing this land into 7 lots, 7 outlots, most of those public parks or stormwater outlots, and then the public streets that you see winding through the development. The certified survey maps, we've reviewed them, the village engineers reviewed them. We have a number of technical comments. We have no comments that would affect the layout of the development. Unlike the final development plan that starts and stops here, the certified survey map needs to go to the village board because it dedicates land to the public. The CSM will go to the village board with a development agreement that will include specifications for public improvements, parks and park fees, and other things between the developer and the village. And we'd expect that in about 3 weeks. So as Paul mentioned, there are some steps after you guys that need to get done, including on the village end. The recommendation on the certified survey maps is a recommendation from P&Z to the village board. The suggested conditions are 1 through 4 in the staff report here in front of you. It's the same as it was in your packet, except for number 2. Number 2 reads, prior to the recording of the CSMs, the applicant shall adjust the CSMs to meet the village engineer's comments. There's a separate report that you see in the report on that. And then the other 2 comments relate to Outlot 1. Outlot 1 is the river corridor, the extreme southeast corner of the development, mostly wetland area, would be dedicated to the village, become public property. The comments are 2 in the CSM. The first is to expand the function of that outlot for both environmental corridor and for trail access. Whether it's through a boardwalk or otherwise, or Moan Trail, there could be ways, probably ways to get to the river bank from Daly Road. So the part of the recommendation is to add that to the suggestion. And then the next one, very minor comment, you see that Outlot 1 kind of ends in a point, a village for purposes of encouraging 90-degree intersections and turn lanes and things like that, like curved radiuses. So the condition would require a curve right where the hand is instead of that outlot ending in a point.
Thank you. So we have a recommendation from staff in front of us. Have further opportunity to discuss, or we be looking for a motion?
I'll make a motion to recommend village board approval of the associated CSMs, subject to the conditions listed.
Thank you, Doug. There's a
I'll second.
motion and seconded by Jean. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you again. Sorry, I lost track of the 5.2. So we'll be moving on to 5.3, which is a public hearing on a request to rezone approximately 66-acre parcel denoted on the agenda from A3 Agricultural Transition District to a combination of M2 General Industrial, E3 Highway Business, and C1 Conservancy Zoning District to facilitate industrial and commercial development west of Hickory Lane and south of Lindy Lane and Highway V. So I'm open up that public hearing at 6:40. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Mark, did you?
Yeah, I think
want
there's
to,
a
or-
presentation that
Hmm.
you guys, HSA has, right? So if you guys want to approach the table, I'll just introduce this real quickly. This is a petition to rezone a substantial piece of land partially to industrial development to facilitate these gentlemen's development project with the remainder for commercial zoning, B3 commercial zoning. And a small area that would be the remaining wetland in this area plus stormwater management for the development to conservancy zoning. There's a couple of items on the agenda after this for recommendation on the rezoning from the Planning and Zoning Commission to the Village Board, and recommendation on an associated certified survey map to the Village Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you please state your name and address for the record, then start your presentation?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ken Osborne with HSA Commercial, 16955 West Wisconsin Avenue in Brookfield. Little background on HSA. We've been in business for a little over 40 years. We develop nationally, but over the last 20 years or so, the bulk of our work has been in Wisconsin. We're long-term holders of our buildings. We're owner operators. We're not merchant builders. And with that in mind, we build real Class A facilities, and we try to be good neighbors in the communities that we develop in. As I mentioned, over the last 20 years, we've really done a lot of development in Wisconsin. We're familiar with the process with the state, and we've had a lot of success. I won't read off everything here, but you can see that we have quite a bit invested here in the state. If you want to put eyes on some recently completed projects we did, 3204 Omeda and 6002 Femrite in Madison. This is near the GE complex there. The larger building there is about 300,000 square feet. The smaller building's about 200,000 square feet. Building one was pre-leased by an outfit called Techniplex. We're having pretty good success with building two and have about half of that leased up as well. So this gives you a pretty good idea of the type of facility we'd be looking to construct here. This is just highlighting the site. You can see west of 90 with really good access, which is one of the things that we really like about this site here. This is just sort of a zoom in here of how we're looking to divide this. Out lot one, again, would be our conservancy zoning. There's a wetland on the north portion of that lot, and the rest of it would contain significant detention to accommodate the rest of the lots. Lot one, we're asking to rezone to B3. Andy Kosenek with Research Products is here. They'll take ownership of lot one, and he can speak more to what their plans are there with that development. And then lot two, 1, 2, and 3, we're asking to rezone to M2 General Industrial District. I'm sorry, 2, 3, and 4. Here's sort of the concept overall development plan we have here. The northern two buildings, which is Plan Right, coming at about 295,000 square feet, and the building south of the Cape Parkway extension, a little under 280,000. These are 32-foot clear buildings. We try to set them up to be able to demise them 4 times, where each tenant would get an office entry and a drive-in door. Doesn't necessarily mean one tenant can take a whole building, 2, 3, any combination of 1 through 4, but we try to set them up to accommodate 4 tenants well. This is just an aerial perspective. Kind of shows you what the completed development would look like with the current conditions on the site. These again are just some concept elevations, give you kind of an idea of some of the color schemes we've done in the past and what the finished product could kind of look like. So that's really it. We have Cushman and Wakefield here, our brokers, who could answer any questions maybe regarding market activity in the area. Like I said, Annie Kosenek with Research Products, who could speak to Lot 1, and Pinnacle, our civil engineer, could answer any engineering specific questions.
Any questions? I am going to, there's nobody online, or is their hand up? So I'm going to close the public hearing. I don't see the time. 6:45. And we'll move on to discussion. You might want to just hold tight in case there's questions, but discussions and recommendation on a request to rezone the approximate 66-acre parcel denoted on the agenda from A3 Agricultural Transition District to a combination of M2 General Industrial, B3 Highway Business, C1 Conservancy Zoning District, facilitate industrial and commercial development west of Hickory Lane and south of Lindy Street, Highway V. Mark, did you want to open with anything, or I'm assuming?
Jim, would you mind opening up 5.5? In this case, I've got a suggestion that you take an action, a motion to recommend both at the same time.
Okay. So 5.5, discussion and recommendation on a request to approve 4-lot, 1 outlot CSM, dividing the 66-acre parcel on the agenda west of Hickory Lane and south of Lindy Street / Highway V. Now, do you want to just open discussion, Mark, or?
Yeah, I'll be brief here. There's an ordinance. This is a village board ordinance that we were asking you to recommend to the board. The ordinance, if approved by the board, would approve the rezoning and approve the certified survey map dividing the land. If I could just walk through the ordinance. Helpful. The way the ordinance is constructed, as has been described, Lot 1 would be rezoned to the B3 district. That's the lot directly south of the hotel out there and an office building on Lindy Street. It would be marketed for commercial development. It could be developed, I suppose, as one large lot or subdivided into smaller lots. And then the lots that what HSA rep discussed this evening, 2, 3, and 4, would be rezoned to the M2 General Industrial District to allow for the multi-tenant industrial space that they're anticipating. And then finally, that outlot 1 on the north edge that has wetland and stormwater management serving the development would be zoned to the village's C1 Conservancy District, which is the standard district for those types of lots. The rezoning as recommended would be subject to a few conditions. It would take effect upon the recording of the certified survey map with the Register of Deeds, and would have to do so basically within a half a year. It's possible that once stormwater management planning progressed, that the outlot size could change a little bit. This proposed approval would allow for some flex or flux in the size of the outlot based on the stormwater needs. This proposed ordinance would also approve the CSM, which is technically number 5.5 on your agenda, subject to a number of conditions. These conditions are a combination of the village engineers and my comments, mostly technical items covering stormwater and then some very minor details, cleanup sort of items. The fourth section of the ordinance would allow for a waiver or an exception to a normal subdivision ordinance requirement. And that normal requirement typically requires a submittal of detailed engineering plans with certified survey maps. We're recommending a waiver in this case because the way this development will progress, the road, the public road within it called Cake Parkway, westerly extension of Cake Parkway, won't come until a later phase. And so we have a condition, in fact, in this approval ordinance, and here it is, number 3, that prior to the development of CSM lots 3 or 4, those are the 2 southern lots, the owner shall submit engineering plans associated with Cake Parkway through the CSM area. So we've got provisions for those to come in the future to support the waiver. So our recommendation for the Plan Commission, it's a little unconventional, is for the Plan Commission to ask the board to support this ordinance, which accomplishes all the things I just mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And that is for both 5.4 and 5.5.
That's correct.
Okay. Any further discussions, or there is the suggested ordinance that staff is lifting? Mike?
Probably a question for Mark. Hickory Lane, what do you see long-term for that to accommodate this type of development and other similar development?
The needs, the infrastructure needs, or?
Well, I'm talking about the road itself. As I recall, it's simply a kind of a rural 2-lane road, isn't it?
Right. I'm gonna put one of our guest stars on Zoom on the spot to talk about the future of Hickory Lane. So Craig, would you mind talking a little bit to that and how that is planned to be upgraded?
Yeah, working with village staff right now to the project, the upgrade of Hickory Lane is in the capital improvement plan for approximately 2 to 3 years down the road. We think we're progressing down a path where we'll make a interim improvement to upgrade the current pavement condition, widen it a little bit, and enhance the asphalt base course that's out there. And ultimately, years down the road, towards the end of the tax increment district out here, TID number 9, that road would be fully upgraded to an urban section then at that time. We're also currently engaged with village staff and looking at intersection improvements at Highway V, and this kind of ties into the Buc-ee's potential development to the north, but understanding traffic impacts at that location and signalization needs specifically there at that intersection.
Thank you, Craig. Mike, did you have any follow-up questions or comments?
No, my interest was really what you were just able to provide.
Yeah, the summary is there's a plan and a funding source to upgrade Hickory Lane and the intersection with V as development demand dictates.
Thank you.
And so sorry to ask you again, Craig, you talked about the improvements at Hickory Lane. Do you know how many lanes we're talking? I know I had talked to another individual and suggested 4, but he had thought that maybe it was going to be a 3-lane with the twiddle. Have you guys gotten that far? Probably not.
Yeah, we're not quite into that level of detail. Again, I'll mention, the Bucky's development to the north, and they completed a TIA for that development, and we've been engaging in conversations with them to potentially expand that TIA. We know that there's a lot of development in the works south of Highway V. And now that we know a little better picture of what that's looking like, we're going to want to capture those traffic generation numbers and then upgrade that TIA that was previously done so that we can get a better gauge on that particular element, Jim.
Thank you. And I apologize for using a term twiddle. If anybody doesn't know what I mean by that, that's the third lane where you can take a left turn either direction. So two-way left turn lane, twiddle. Yeah. Yep. Mike, you are done. Any other discussion items? Or again, there's a Lisa, I think I saw your hand.
Thank you, Jim. Yeah, we're looking at a multi-tenant industrial building for lease and potential, approval of conservancy and wetlands next to this. So obviously from an environmental perspective, the hairs on the back of my neck are standing up, so to speak. So I'm curious if we could, exactly take a look at the map and really get an idea of what we're looking at for environmental exposure. Also curious if we have a wellhead anywhere in the vicinity of this general location, just to get a better idea of what we're really talking about here.
Craig, could you maybe answer that? I'm unclear myself about the wellhead. I think Vienna, do they have one in their building or?
No wellhead protection zone here from the village's ordinance. I'm unaware. Vienna does not have a municipal well anywhere. So there's no wellheads out here for protection purposes that I'm aware of.
Any concern for residential wells? They're out in the countryside there.
The nearest residence is probably a quarter-mile away to the northwest, and there are very few houses in this area. It's probably one of its top 10 assets for industrial development.
Okay, and then in general, with multi-tenant industrial building, what type of tenants are you expecting to attract for this location?
Sure. And anything we do obviously would have to fall within the M2 general industrial use, so it would be subject to approval. Lately, we've been seeing, we've had a material sciences company take space in one of our buildings. We can have some warehousing in our buildings, some 3PLs. Those are typically the three users that we're seeing in this size of kind of single load building. Obviously on a speculative basis, you don't know exactly what you're going to get, but generally it falls within one of those three categories. And as far as environmental concerns, I don't think any heavy manufacturing is even allowed in the M2 zoning. And generally that's not the type of tenant that we're getting in these spec facilities, that heavy manufacture that would be producing any kind of, hazardous waste.
Two quick follow-ups, Lisa. The village board recently approved the site plan amendments that you recommended, that whenever we get a site plan or a conditional use permit where there's some suggestion of use of hazardous chemicals or materials in larger quantities, there's now an ordinance requirement that says there'll be a spill prevention and mitigation plan that will be required as part of that submittal. A second quick comment, and your photo here, it's kind of like a Where's Waldo, spot the wetland on the map, because it's at the north end, but it's a severely degraded wetland farmed during drier years. So I think there's only opportunities to improve the wetland and its function with this development from how it currently performs.
Thank you, Mark. Lisa, you still have the floor.
Thank you. That's all I have for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Maybe could I ask a follow-up on Lisa's question? Have you looked at our ordinance to know all the different businesses that are allowed? And is there any as a landlord that you are not going to allow yourself?
I'm not intimately familiar with the list. Again, generally we're not getting users that would be considered controversial, but if, again, anything we think doesn't fall in line with the M2 zoning, and I think regardless, we're going to have to come in for permits for tenant improvements every time we get a user in here. So I think we'll always be subject to approval when we get a tenant.
Can I ask a quick
Go ahead.
add-on? I didn't notice any outdoor storage as part of your program. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, no, the plan is not to include any outdoor storage in this speculative development. If we had a tenant that came in and needed it, again, we would have to come back and go through the process if we wanted the approval.
That's typically a trigger when you guys see it and a conditional use permit requirement starts to come in. But in general, the types of uses that Ken mentioned are typically permitted by right uses. So they will come back before you for site plan approval. But as they fill in the tenant spaces, most of what he's describing sounds to me like permitted by right uses, all indoors, clean industry, warehousing kind of uses. So you may not see or know when business A or business B comes in and out because they won't have to come before P and Z typically.
Yep. And Mark, when you said you talked about it's HSA, it won't be the individual tenants. The we is for the site plan approval.
Yes, thank you.
Any further discussion? And we're looking for a motion. There was a staff recommendation of an ordinance. Is there anybody willing to make a motion? I will make a motion to recommend the ordinance 2025, Aaron, whatever it will be, to the village board. It's an ordinance approving the rezoning of approximately 66 acres parcel on the screen from the A3 Agriculture Transition District to the M2 General Industrial, B3 Highway Business, and C1 Conservancy Zoning District, and approving a certified survey map dividing the same parcel, Village of DeForest, Dane County, Wisconsin. And I'm recommending approval of that ordinance as written and presented to us tonight. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Jean. And can I clarify, maybe I'm looking with Mark, was this in our packet or was this?
Yeah.
There wasn't any changes denoted. So.
That's correct.
Okay.
Exactly
So,
as it was in your packet.
Yep. So as presented to us tonight and what's in the packet. So any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is a public hearing on a request. I should thank you all for coming too. Next on the agenda is 5.6, public hearing on a request to rezone a parcel 0910 181 8007. Oh, there's going to be too many. And another parcel denoted on the agenda. 424 and 420 North Main Street from the B2 General Business District, and a parcel on the agenda 109 West North Street from RM4 Residential Mixed Multifamily Housing District to the PUD Planned Unit Development District. to be considered a PUD preliminary development plan to facilitate the proposed mixed.
It really does make
residential
sense, Jim. I read it a few times, but it's long.
To Main Street, period. And now I need to take a drink and hopefully I stalled long enough that you could pull up the concept or whatever you wanted to do.
I'll kick it off and then I think Alex will present the plan to you. This was also on your agenda last month.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, open the public
Oh,
hearing
I'm sorry.
at 7:04. Thank you, Mark.
So, thank you. This is also on the agenda. The proposal is to rezone 3 parcels from their current zoning districts, the standard conventional zoning districts, to the PUD, all 3 to the PUD Plan Unit Development District to enable the comprehensive redevelopment of those 3 sites for a mixed-use building that Alex will describe. This is the first phase of a 2-phase plan unit development process. You're starting to get the rhythm here with all these proposals, but this is the preliminary development plan phase where you all, if you see fit, make a recommendation to the village board to rezone this site PUD and to approve the preliminary development plan. That entitles the applicant to move forward with more specific plans that they could bring back forward to you at a later date. And I think with that, I'll turn it to Alex, who can get into more detail.
So obviously we presented the concept plan at the last meeting. Nothing's dramatically changed from that. The PDP is in your packet. I will note that I also have Bill Nolk from Kaler Slater on the call. And I don't know if our engineer from Veerbecker is still on the call, but he's also part of the project team. I can certainly be available to talk through this more and answer questions probably in the next item. But given the fact that we did the concept presentation last time, I'll just leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Alex.
Alex, do you want to just comment that you guys had a neighborhood meeting and, probably why we don't have a big neighborhood attendance here tonight?
Yeah, so in the time since we did the initial concept presentation, we did hold a neighborhood meeting at Cornerstone Community Center. I would say we had probably 20 people in attendance. Number of trustees were there as well. Received a variety of feedback that was really good points for consideration. A lot of concerns that we heard were related to traffic inflow and outflow on Highway V, pedestrian facilitation, also mostly on Highway V, particularly that one person said making the walk back from Parks on Highway V is not necessarily always a fun trek, and I've made that myself. There was a recommendation to potentially consider rooftop amenities, which was an interesting thought too. So all in all, it was a good conversation, and I envision that as we continue to kind of flesh out the design, we may hold a couple more of those as well.
Thank you. And I'd also add what I heard was a lot of general appreciation for the layout. So I do not see anybody wishing to speak. Okay. So I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:07 and we'll move on to the discussion. Discussion and recommendation on the request to rezone parcels denoted on the agenda from B2 General Business District and RM4 Residential Mix Multifamily Housing District to the PUD District and consider a PUD preliminary development plan to facilitate the mixed residential commercial redevelopment project at the southwest corner of North and Main Street. Discussion. I think it might be to the committee if there's any discussion. Comments? We have an ordinance in front of us. So this is a recommendation to the village board. Yes, Mark, could you go through the ordinance a bit?
Sure. Yeah, so thanks, Jim. This is a recommendation to the village board, rezoning and preliminary development plan. The ordinance is relatively straightforward. It rezones the piece. It would rezone the piece to the PUD district if approved. It would take effect only upon your approval of a final development plan at a later date. And them actually, the CDA actually pulling the trigger and building the building. Condition 2 is interesting, and Alex could speak to this a little bit more. It allows for the final development plan to be smaller than the 3 parcels if all 3 parcels couldn't be secured in particular. So that's of note. We hope it doesn't have to take place, but it's possible that the ultimate PUD might be a little smaller. And then the 3rd condition is a standard with all plan unit developments under state law. It has 5 years to be executed. And then it just refers to the actual PDP document that's not in this file, but is included in the packet, and we can visit when and if you like.
Okay, thank you. I guess a question to Alex, you talked about or mentioned in that item number 2 is secured. Could you maybe give us a status update on what the statuses are of each parcel?
Yeah, so the 3 parcels that we're talking about are at the corner of Main and V. It's the, what was the formerly DeForest Liquor Mart, the vacant car wash that's there, and then a residential property to the west. You can kind of see it there. We do have the CDA, I should say, has a purchase agreement for the liquor store, which we're hoping to close on in May. The car wash property went through a condemnation process, which the CDA at this point has the authority to issue payment for. We haven't yet issued that payment, but certainly we've checked all the boxes for condemnation. And then the final property to the west, it's ongoing negotiations, and I'm anticipating that we will have an executable option to purchase at our March 13th meeting. So the property owners for that did consent to allowing us to rezone this as well, with the understanding that if we did not purchase that property and the development only took place on the 2 easternmost properties, that the zoning for their property would go back to RM4, I believe it was.
Thank you. Other questions, comments from the commissioners? Lisa?
Yeah, I was just curious because I'm not sure, that liquor store kind of looks like an old gas station to me when I drive by there. And then also at the car wash there, is that technically a brownfield that's blighted for like a CERCLA type superfund, like tax?
So the car wash is actually a cleaned up site. So that does have a continuing obligation on it, and it's a groundwater restriction. So obviously we're not going to be putting any wells on that. So that's the restriction there. The liquor store, we haven't done any due diligence just yet. Obviously we want to get a little bit further along in the project before we do that. But I'm not sure what the history of that site is. So I can't really speak to that just yet. But the car wash is a known quantity there.
Does it require, does it require additional cleanup or any kind of?
No, it's the car wash.
So, I mean, in terms of like any mitigation or anything.
No, all it has on it now, it's a cleaned up site. So it already had the cleanup done. They dug out, it was an old petroleum tank that was there, a buried tank. And it just has, like I said, the continuing obligation to maintain a groundwater use restriction on that.
Okay, thank you.
Which wouldn't really affect the project.
Thank you.
Lisa, please correct me, Alex, if I misspoke, but at the last village board meeting, one of my things I was going to report on is that we authorized executing an environmental assessment. And I know at least with the DOT environmental assessments that it would include a hazardous materials review too.
Yeah, that is correct. So because this project might have federal funding involved in it, we had to do a Part 58 environmental review. And the village signed off on being the responsible entity for that. So they'd be the certifying officer. HUD eventually has to approve that. I don't know how that's going to happen or when that's going to happen at this point. But we did issue a finding of no significant impact as part of that assessment. And right now it's in its, actually this Friday? This Friday, there'll be the published notice of that finding of no significant impact, FONSI. And then there's a 15-day comment period, and then we'll submit that to HUD for review.
So it sounds to me like after we get the FONSI and all of that, we should be good to go. We don't need the EPA or anything like that to come in, and I mean, since it is technically cleaned up.
No, that's true. I will say that we'll probably still do at the very least a phase 1 environmental assessment. And obviously, if anything is turned up with that, we'd look at a phase 2, but we'll still do a phase 1.
Thank you.
Anything else, Lisa? Any other commissioners? Seeing none, again, we do have a recommended ordinance in front of us. This would be an ordinance being recommended to the village board. Is there anybody willing to make a motion? Seeing none, I see Mark reach for his mic, so I didn't know if you were gonna make the motion. I will make a motion to recommend ordinance 2025 underscore to be numbered later. The ordinance approving a rezoning of a planned unit development, preliminary development plan for the Yahara Crossing mixed-use development at the southwest corner of North and Main Street, Village of DeForest, Dane County, Wisconsin. That ordinance is in front of us tonight, and I believe it's also what was in our packet. That is my motion to recommend to the village board.
I will.
And there's a second by Shannon. Are we ready to continue or, okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Presentation and discussions, there is none. Thank you, Alex, and congratulations. Any other business that lawfully comes before the Village of DeForest Planning and Zoning Commission? Chair's report. I just have in front of me the last village board meeting, and I'm sort of looking at Alex or Brandy because I did not go to the committee of the wholes, which I think was a housing discussion. Was there any highlights you wanted to bring up with that?
Yeah, so I presented to the village board statutorily every year. We're required to do a housing report, availability report, and fee report that's posted on our website. Rather than go through all of it with you here, you can find it on the community development page of the website. Basically, the fee report just goes through what we charge for application, permitting, and impact fees. What we collected in 2024 for those fees are all listed in there. They're separated out by permit type and things like that. The housing report itself goes through basically an high-level highlight of benchmarks that we've met, initiatives, things like that compared to our comprehensive plan as far as it goes in comparison to the housing side of things. Current available lots that are out there for sale, acres that have been approved for residential but aren't developed. The one highlight I did bring up to the village board is that currently we have, and it might be different as of today, but about 27 single-family lots available on all of the village that can currently be built on right now. So our inventory for active lots is very, very low, which does not meet what the market demand is out there for Dane County. And so we do have a couple of developments coming in, Bueller Farms, Homestead Edition, potential things with Tierney on another site, things like that that have been approved. So those could, fill in that gap. But just noting that the inventory is pretty low in our area. So, like I said,
Last phase, I'm sorry, Brandy, last phase of Rivers Turn is, under construction.
it's done.
Too.
Yeah, it's all filling up really, really quickly. Yeah, so, but like I said, it's on the website if you guys want to go out and gander, and if you do look at it and have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you, and I'll continue with that meeting. There was an attachment from the Village of Windsor. I think that attachment had to do with that small little strip that's along, I don't know, I'll say Oak Springs and the Knolls area. I talked about the environmental assessment that Alex already brought up. There is the chapter 15 and 13. Those were both approved. Those were big items as far as a lot of staff participation or a lot of staff input. So I thank you all for doing that. Rivers Stone Phase 2 plat, that's the Brian Sipple area. I think it's 4 different buildings right on the corner of Windsor and River Road. That was approved. DeForest Police got a number of grants. It's called Sierra Cardinal, which I know it more as the Youngblood Brewery. That actually got terminated, that development agreement. I have talked with one individual, or mainly our village administration, and he seems to think that that's still progressing. I'm looking at Alex nodding, but just there is a change in management, so there was some times lap in that agreement. So I'm still hopeful for that development, but
Yeah, they've just been struggling with their costs. So they had one general contractor lined up and they switched. And last I heard, maybe a week and a half ago, was that they're back on track with where their costs are at. So
thank you. Another big accomplishment is the intergovernmental cooperation agreement for fire and EMS services was signed, and I found out that night that's been something that's really been, I'll say, more than past due. There's been a number of years that it's just been continuing on a year-and-year basis, so it's nice to have that sort of back behind us and now on for a number of years. And not necessarily part of the discussion, but it will be, is there's also talk of a south, what do they call it? I want to say fire station, but there's probably a better term for that. So if you're not aware of that, you can talk to me later. Satellite station, yep. And then we do have somebody on board now to do the fireworks for July 3rd. If you aren't aware, we are taking over the fireworks management or the fireworks celebration management from the chamber this year. And the last thing I have is an annexation from the Vienna. This is a bit north, I'll say northwest of the Bucky's lot that now is going to be coming into the village. Those are everything I had on that last village board. What I don't have on the last village board, because I don't have other ones or other agendas in front of me, but there's been quite a bit of conversation about fluoride. And if you haven't seen that, you're probably living under a rock. If you want to talk to me about that, I can share tons of information.
After the meeting.
Yes. So moving on, any questions on the report? And staff report 7.2. Brandy, anything?
Nope, I already talked about the housing report, so we're good.
Good. Alex or Mark? Site plan approvals, CSM approvals?
Nope.
Development process and enforcement suggestions, anybody? Next meeting is March 25th, 2025. Brandy, I'm assuming we're not gonna have an interim meeting? Okay,
Correct.
so is there a motion to adjourn by anybody? Shannon?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Shannon. I think I'm gonna second that because I don't see anybody leaning into the mic.
It's to talk today.
So all those in favor of the adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. at 7:25. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.